It's Saturday. Good morning, everyone. I'm fired up to be doing this on the weekends. The weekends for me are actually really reflective times where I do a fair amount of work and on myself. I do a lot of reading. Obviously, I'll do stuff outside and the family and all those different things. But I actually my mindset is is actually the weekend is a really important time for me investing into myself. So I actually enjoy bringing all of you in with me. Mr. Corvino, Frankie, what's happening, man? Good to see you from Hoboken today. Hey, listen, everybody. Today we are going to discuss one of my personal favorite behavior skills that unleashes greatness, and that's the behavior skill of humility. I personally think this is the reason this is one of my favorites is because humility is massively misunderstood. It is something that gets preached a lot more than it gets practiced, and for me, that unsettles me. Anything that would qualify as being more preachy than practical, something that gets told more than it gets done, that I'm not into that. And so this is one where we're told be humble, right? We are authority figures throughout life, and people in positions of stages are tell everybody else to be humble and have humility, and anybody who doesn't have humility, you kind of get cast down. And very rarely do we get taught how to be humble, but frequently we'll get told to be humble. And so I want to do my part to contribute to teaching what is humility, and maybe settling some misunderstandings, or feeding confidence in you and how to be humble. Before we get into that, I do want to level set for all of these 20 behavior skills that we're talking about, and all of this guide on how to be self-aware and have self-control and be self-confident. I do want to emphasize for all of you the role of simplicity, and what I hope is happening for all of you, and I hope you're picking up from how I go about this and what I'm attempting to insert and bring clarity into your life. I hope you are recognizing how important simplicity is to reground you in reality of these behavior skills, because it's really easy for these common words: energy, time, humility, patience, time, attention, focus. It's very easy for these words to turn into, that are common words, for them to turn into cliches and concepts. And we can get caught tweeting them and quoting them and looking at them on Instagram and all these different things. And here's what my objective is across all of these behavior skills. And again, whether it's the guide itself or the videos, if you're just watching these, or anything that I do, my hope is that in my small way, I am contributing to you and the people that you are maybe transferring these to, teaching these skills to, that I'm contributing to moving them from concept to concrete, from the principle to the practical, right? From the idea to the action. That's ultimately my objective. And if we can simplify this, I really want to improve the understanding that you have to make it more real for your life. And so I'm mentioning that today because I think humility is one of the areas where we drift to the concept, we drift to the idea, we drift to, again, the sort of the preachy or the principle, and we don't do a great job of converting it to the practical. And let me give you an example of how this shows up in our life. It shows up like this. How often have you heard somebody say, or have you said, whenever you're admitting something, you'll start it with the phrase, "Now I'm not perfect, but," and then you'll come out with whatever it is, or they will. And what I want to call your attention to is, have you ever been accused of being perfect? Why do we start off a phrase with, now I'm not perfect, but, and it's kind of like it's like a false humility projection. Like we get credit for admitting we're not perfect. And with love, you don't get credit for admitting you're not perfect because you've never been accused of that. There is nobody in the world who thinks you're perfect. Now, there might be people who think that you think higher of yourself, and then so you're trying to lower yourself down and gain some goodwill and some cred. But I think that just means that we misunderstood that we're trying to protect self-image is really what it is. We're trying to protect self-image when we say things like that. So let's rewind and let's actually look at what humility is. So a quick and clear understanding of humility. Humility is the simple skill of being immune to praise, unaffected by criticism, open to feedback, and willing to work to improve. It's really just those four things. It's immunity to praise. We're never as good as the high levels of praise that wash over us are. It's being unaffected by criticism, meaning the criticism that you receive doesn't affect your self-worth. It's a huge part of humility. It's being open to feedback. Very key piece there. It's not taking in all feedback. It's not acting on all feedback. It's not ignoring feedback. It's not believing every piece of feedback you receive because it's not all accurate. It's an openness to it, right? It's a willingness to say, I am not shut to feedback. I am open to feedback. And in that openness, some of it I pull in, some of it I keep at a distance but evaluate, and some of it I reject as soon as it comes to me as I look at it. That's what openness does for us. And then the last one is a willingness to work to improve. This is a key element of humility. That's the difference, the willingness to work, right? The action involved, that's the difference, the primary difference between the concept of humility and the concrete nature of it. That's the difference between the idea of humility, which is worthless, and the action of humility, which is priceless. It is invaluable to have the action behind it. So a couple things about this. Humility is not the absence of confidence, right? Humility is not, it often gets defined as thinking of yourself less. And I don't believe that's what humility is. Humility isn't thinking about yourself less, because often that results in people pleasing or not understanding where you are. Humility is having a healthy, clear, full view of yourself. Right? It's not thinking of yourself less. I don't think that's necessarily the right or healthy thing for people to do. We want to have a good view of ourselves. We want to have a clear view of ourselves. And in reality, humility is actually the foundation of confidence in a really great way. Because what is humility? Humility is to have a view of yourself that is secure. Right? When you go back, immune to praise, unaffected by criticism. That means that no matter how much praise we receive, no matter how great we're told we are, and no matter how much we're told that we suck, we have security. I'm not overinflated, and I'm not undervaluing. I am trying to have. I'm not going to call it accurate because we can't view with accuracy. It's too messy. But we have a secure, that's the word that I really want you to leave today with, secure view. Because without security, what happens is it's really hard to act with humility. And I believe in acting with an aggressive form of humility. Be aggressive about your humility. Aggressive in how you approach it in your life, aggressive in how you display it, but also aggressive in the security of yourself and the confidence that you go forward with. Because whenever we're wrong, we want to be aggressive in our corrections. We want to be aggressive in admitting it. Meaning, we don't want to delay and make people work hard to acknowledge in ourselves that this is, hey, you made a mistake. No, I want to be quick into that. I don't want to be slow to acknowledge that. So, humility is the foundation of the strongest form of confidence. So, a handful of things about humility, and obviously any Q&As that you guys want, throw them into the questions. It started with Q&A so that I can answer I can answer any of your questions and I can see them. We'll get to those here in a few minutes. So a couple things about this. When you've got a good sense of humility, a good sense of humility is not afraid of the truth, and a good sense of humility is not afraid of the opinions of anybody. Because the truth only hurts when it's not what you want it to be. And that is a simple statement that if you take that and do something with it and you bring that into your life, it has the power to change a lot for you. The truth only hurts when it's what you don't want it to be. Because when the truth gets delivered and you like the truth and it works for you and it's what you wanted it to be, it doesn't hurt. And we love those truths. But when the truth comes to us and that truth is not what we want, absence of humility causes that pain to try to ignore the truth or project something else or do something to inflate ourselves or argue a point that we already know to be wrong. And it's the absence of humility that causes us to hide from or reject or ignore the truth. And so real humility, it embraces truth and embraces reality no matter what it is that it's saying. And that's a great sense of humility. And that's why I call it aggressive, because the aggressive pursuit of the truth has to be grounded in humility, because there's a number of truths in this life that are not going to be the things that we want. They're not going to be the things that we believed in originally. They're not going to be the perspectives or opinions that we hold. They're not going to be the strategies that we chose. And so building yourself on humility, it actually grounds you in truth and reality, some of which is going to work for you, some of which is not. The second thing about humility is not afraid of opinions, right? Opinions only harm you. Of anybody. Opinions of other people only harm you when you attach your identity to them. Again, that's another really big truth. The opinions of other people can only harm you if you've attached your identity or your value to those opinions. And what I believe humility can do for you is it can actually do two really powerful things, one internal, one external. The first is that humility, in terms of viewing yourself, can help you build a security that gives you a good and healthy barrier, a detachment from the opinions of others, so that your security is built on yourself because you're humble enough to know that you don't have everything right. Already you're not faultless and flawless. And anybody who wants to have an opinion of you that would be critical, you already know that there are opinions people could hold critically of you that would be accurate. I do as well. Anybody could come and point out flaws and mistakes and errors and gaps in me. No problem. No problem. It would take you 24 hours to find those, right? So anytime those get pointed out, humility in me allows me to not attach my own value to an opinion that somebody else has, because I could say, well, of course. Well, of course. And then the second part about that is that when somebody points out in me a flaw or has an opinion of me that I don't agree with, humility allows me to say, they're entitled to have that opinion. They're entitled to have that perspective. And my humility means they don't need to think great of me. They don't need to agree with me. They don't have to view that in me in this way. The ego causes me to say, I want them to believe all the things I want them to believe about me. And if they don't, that's or they must be, that's what my ego wants me to say. Push that aside. Humility grounds me in truth. Humility grounds me in the fact that opinions do not dictate my security. They do not dictate my value. And I can have a healthy detachment and relationship with them with the right kinds of healthy barriers between those things. I think that's a really important piece. Next one, control yourself, right? So self-awareness is that truth and that opinions. And self-control is this. Humility is not something that is explained. Humility is something that is demonstrated, okay? I'm not going to talk a ton about this because I want this crystal clear in your mind. This is the one thing. This is the one thing I want you to leave this behavior skill in this video with. If you don't get anything else out, this is it. It is easy to say you're humble. It's hard to show it. Humility is not something you explain. Humility is something you demonstrate. When it comes to self-control and owning yourself and being disciplined, make your life about displaying humility, not explaining it. That's it. Everybody says humility. Few people commit their actions to injecting it into their lives. That's what I want to make sure that we walk out of here with. You can be confident. You can display a lot of different stuff. Don't get confused on style, right? Don't confuse humility with meekness. You don't have to be meek to be humble. My style doesn't naturally, from a style perspective, I tend to display plenty of confidence and I have energy, and that can get misinterpreted and all. And I'm not worried about my style on that. What I'm focused on is when there are times for me to act with humility, do I follow action with humility? That's the focus. Not do I explain it, not do I sound like it, not does my style, action, right? The execution of this piece. So that's what I want in the self-control, what I want to make sure we walk out of here with. And then the last one is believing in yourself, right? Humility is not the absence of confidence, and believing in yourself is not ego. Humility is, like I said previously, humility is actually the strongest form and the very foundation of self-belief and self-confidence. Because look, there's no way you're getting everything right. Right? I mean, this is part of the practical side of this, right? Simple, practical, usable, real. There is no way you do everything right. So in a way, we don't have any option but to bring humility into our lives, because there is no chance we're getting everything right. The only way that you can act like you have everything right is to eject humility. And sometimes we do this, and in fact, a fair amount we do this. What we don't want to confuse this with is we don't want to confuse, or I should say, let me phrase this better. What we don't want is we don't want to bring self-importance into our lives, and we don't want to bring self-criticism into our lives, right? We want to have self-awareness without self-judgment. I think we'll talk about that later in the behavior skills. But the absence of humility, or sometimes the overextension, the mismanagement of humility, where people don't know how to be humble and they overdo certain things. The absence of it goes to self-importance. Nope, don't do that. The overextending of it goes to self-criticism, where we're so humble, we undermine our own credibility and our own selves, where we're not good enough at anything and everybody's better than me, and no, we don't express any opinions because, oh, who am I to ever say? And both of those are ineffective for their own reasons. Self-confidence is acknowledging with humility that you have value, but that value has limits. You have contributions, but you also have gaps. You have things that you can do really well, but other things you can't do as well, and maybe there's things that you do well, but not in certain circumstances. It's the full picture of yourself, and then having that self-confidence and self-belief in two things. One, your ability to do it well where you can, and then number two, I guess three things. One, your ability to do it well. Two, that you will in fact make mistakes and you do in fact have gaps. And then number three is your ability to make corrections when you do make mistakes. And I think that's a really clear, healthy, good view of what it means to act with humility. Okay? So really it's about combining this humility plus self-confidence that I think is it's the real missing ingredient of people acting and living with humility. So throw some questions in here. I'm going to answer some questions. And while you're typing a couple of those in, I've got some notes that I wrote, in the worksheet side of the guidebook here around these. While you're typing out some questions, and that's I'll go through the three that I put from a mindset perspective around humility in self-awareness, self-control, and self-confidence. Around the mindset side, in terms of how am I going to think when it comes to humility? For self-awareness, here's what I wrote down. Am I willing to be wrong? And am I willing to see my gaps? And willingness to be wrong is it also injects a willingness to try, which feeds directly into the self-control side. Because if you're not willing to be wrong, and I think this is one of the misunderstandings of humility, sometimes people will claim humility as an excuse for never trying. And I don't think that's humility. I actually think that's, in fact, it's not. It's fear, right? It's ego. It's the opposite of humility. Humility tries. Fear and ego is what, and this is counterintuitive, but consider this. Fear, rooted in ego, is the thing that causes you to not try because you're unwilling to be wrong and look wrong in front of others, and then the rejection that would flow from that. Think about that. Humble people put themselves out there. Humble people try because if they're wrong, they acknowledge. And they say, I'm secure enough to be wrong. No problem. And that's the aggression that I'm talking about. That's aggressive humility. It's a willingness to go and say, I'm humble enough to acknowledge that I'm not that good at this. Or I'm humble enough to know that if I try, I may actually not be successful. And that's okay because I am immune to praise and I am unaffected by criticism because I'm rooted in a healthy sense of humility that is the foundation of my confidence. That is such a practical way to go about it. So the self-awareness is, am I willing to be wrong? And then am I willing to look at where my gaps are? Am I willing to actually see those? That's the self-awareness side. The self-control side is, am I willing to do two things? Am I willing to try my approach and let its consequences play out? And am I also willing to try someone else's approach and someone else's ideas and someone else's perspectives and someone else's strategies and let those play out so that they can deliver their value as well? Humility is both of those. Sometimes it's going to be my way, sometimes it'll be your way, and sometimes your way is going to be superior to mine. And if I have humility, I acknowledge that that is a reality of the futures that are going to play out, and we're going to let them go, and we'll see how this all goes. We're not competing per se in this, okay? And then the third thing, and I love this, I won't get everything right. Okay, this is self-confidence. I won't get everything right. But three things about me not getting everything right. And I think this is a great internal script and mindset for you as well. Or I guess it's two things, right? So the first is, I won't get everything right. Number two, mindset. But I will get enough right. Self-confidence. I won't get everything right, but I will get enough right. And then the second piece, or the third, I should say, I guess you're confused on the numbers now, right? Number one, I won't get everything right. Number two, I will get enough right. And number three, when I don't get it right, I'm good enough to make corrections. I won't get it all right. I will get enough right. The things I don't get right, I'm good enough to make corrections. That is a healthy, strong sense of humility, but it's aggressive about how it goes about it. So let's jump into some Q&As. Let's answer some questions. Thank you all for being here on a Saturday. I hope you enjoy this. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to do this at 11 a.m. On a Sunday. We're going to extend it forward 1 hour for people because I just think that'll work a little bit better. Let's see who's all here. We got Aaron, John, Amy, Nicole, Stephen, Dave, Dan from Des Moines, Iowa. Quiet time on the weekend this is great. Joe Collins up in Maryland. What's happening? Just with the Terps football team yesterday. We've got Minty, Andy from my team is here. Pam, battle tested, loves Chipper Jones. I thought Chipper was super humble and a great competitor as well. Let's see, Joe. Let's see, question from Joe. The worst critic oftentimes for a lot of people, John Perry, what's happening, man, up in Nixa now in Missouri. A lot of times the worst critic is ourselves. So, having humility with yourself is obviously a huge piece. I actually would say if I were giving people a roadmap, or I guess if people were to ask me, so take this with the humility that I'm not dictating any of this to you, but if I play out a scenario where somebody were to ask me, hey, what would I recommend in terms of the cause and effect of humility as it relates to self and others, is I would say this. I would say don't ever do humility. Don't ever engage in humility or try to show or explain or express humility for anyone else's pleasure or anyone else's opinion or anyone else's approval. I would actually go so far as to say it doesn't matter if you're trying to engage in humility to gain credit from others. You need to be humble for your reasons. You need to inject humility in your life to the extent that you would need to. And same for me, because of what it does for you and who you are. And when you're doing that well for your reasons, it naturally comes out for other people. But that cause and effect matters. If you're not doing it internally for self and then letting it flow out of you and display to others so that other people are seeing that come out of you, that's empty on the inside, right? You want to be full on the inside and then let it come out to others. And then acknowledge, look, here's humility on my side. Acknowledge, no matter how much I work on myself internally and try to build myself into a good person, living my values, being confident and humble at the same time, expressing care, concern, truth, love, and trying to do all of this, people are not going to like me. There's nothing I can do, right? No matter what I do and how I express myself and how I get it out there, people are not going to like how I go about it or what I do or what I'm saying or an opinion I expressed. There is nothing I can do to gain the approval of everybody or have everyone like me. There are literally people who think that I am the worst speaker they have ever heard. There are people who cannot stand what I teach and the way I teach it. Okay. I hope they find people that they do trust and that they do love and they do dial into and that does add value to their life. If it's not me, I hope it's somebody else. That's the humility piece. Because I'm not doing this for their approval or their benefit. I'm doing it to add value to people with the best way that I know how. And so I try to approach that with a very clear, strong sense of humility inside out. Because I think that's the way that it gets expressed in the most honest and real way that lets people like you, who are gaining value, get it the best possible way. All right, couple more questions. Q&A. Where's the line between criticism and feedback? Can criticism be confused with feedback because it hurts and thus confused with an uncomfortable truth? Great question, Corey. Not a planted question, but this is why I set up what I call the criticism filtering strategy. It's actually one of the resources inside the Daily Discipline community paid section. So if you're a subscriber and you're paying $20 a month or $200 a year in the Daily Discipline community, there is a resource guide in there called the Criticism Filtering Strategy. And here's the basic of what it is. If you're interested, you can go in and you can get it if you join the community and get it in the resources section. It's filtering criticism by two things. Number one, accuracy. And then number two, the intent of the sender. Accuracy has a scale, right? From the bottom, not accurate at all. And then it scales up to completely accurate. And it can be in between, right? It can be somewhat accurate, pretty accurate, mostly accurate, completely. And then we measure the intention of the sender. And intention of senders ranges from intentions where people are trying to sting us or hurt us, or they have selfish or ego intentions, all the way to intentions where people love us and care about us and mean the best for us. And so processing any kind of a feedback or criticism, and I don't even separate the two, let's put this all in the same, is processing through the lens of the combo of those two things. And that creates 4 different quadrants, right? That creates, super accurate to not accurate at all, and then super negative towards you or aimed at being harmful, bad intent, all the way to really good intent. And based on the combination, you can quickly and confidently and with humility process the criticism or feedback that you receive. And based on where it lands, there's different things to do with different forms of criticism. So that's how I use it. And I find that it is a massively helpful piece to help us process, because we make quicker decisions with less emotional fog and a lot more confidence, and it frankly injects a ton more humility. Can I talk a little bit about, hold on, I skipped one. There we go. Would give us some nuggets. Yesterday's were super fit for me. Yeah. A couple nuggets. Number one, I just think I'm going back to a couple things. Number one, don't ever let your humility eat away at your confidence. That's the number one thing. Number two, humility is best practiced in action, and there is really no value to the words of humility. I think that's the number one thing that for me, everybody says they're humble, right? Like, people express humility all the time. Like, what only counts is showing. Expressing humility is fake. Like, that's fake humility. It's not functional. Functional humility has to be demonstrated. And then the third piece, the third nugget would just be, I think if you acknowledge your gaps, bring confidence to the areas where you're not good, meaning like just confidently acknowledge where they are, right? So you move around them and through them and you get help. The lack of humility is what causes us to not ask for help. So, there's a great action, right? There's a great nugget. If you want to show humility, ask for help. What a great explanation. Like, just ask for help. It's a great demonstration of humility. Talk a little bit about where opinions fit into a healthy lifestyle. Let me give you a 15-second answer. 99% of the things that you have opinions on are unnecessary. Almost everything does not require your opinion at all. It just doesn't. So, and also the opinions of everybody else, 99% of them largely are unaffected and don't need to be brought into how you need to be managing yourself, because people's opinions are based on wild, crazy sets of information, invented stories in their head, emotions they're not fully in control of, and ultimately opinions of others are all external things, not internal for you. And a lot of the internal opinions that you have are about external things that you can't control and don't have a direct effect on your life. So, opinions are way down the list of things that I think are valuable and important in people's lives. I think they're way down the list. I invested very little to any attention onto opinions. Can I speak how to develop aggressive humility? Again, I'm going to go back to a couple of things I just said, right? I don't think it's a whole lot different. It's looking for action. It is combining this security and confidence. It's acknowledging what we do well, acknowledging what we don't. And then I think it is in discussion and action, we're looking for, we're trying things. One of the things I haven't said that I think is a great way to practice aggressive humility is go try stuff. Right? Like, practicing aggressive humility is find out how good you actually are. Like on the pursuit of elite, on trying to go get better, go try to do stuff, and start developing aggressive humility by getting an accurate sense or a healthy sense of what you can do and what you can't, where you stand and where you don't, what you feel good about and what you don't feel so good about. That's that aggressive humility in your life, because fear and ego causes us to not try, and it causes us to be more passive and just try to stay in the middle and be safe and think that that's safe and secure. But really, it's just it's the absence of humility, and it's being way too passive about the entire thing. How do I insert and teach humility into team norms? I've established teams where humility and vulnerability are absent. Um, that is a good question. How do you inject humility into teams? I find that let's use the basis of this, right? The starting point. The starting point of injecting humility is telling the truth. That's the starting point, right? It's the truth with love. So it's hard to have humility if everybody's dealing with their picture or their lens or their opinions of what they think reality is. So the starting point of humility, and again, go back, right? Right from here, okay? Right? Right? Real humility is seriously self-confident. It is not self-important or self-critical. And that's what happens on teams that struggle to tell the truth, is they struggle to tell the truth because they swing from self-importance to self-judgment and self-criticism. So the foundation of a team dealing with aggressive humility and trying to become a team like that is first and foremost to make sure everybody's feet are planted in the ground on truth and reality. We're going to it's being really, really grounded in cause and effect. That's the starting point for all teams. And then from there, right, from there we're building the healthy sense of confidence with the healthy sense of where our actual gaps are, and we're not having to hide from any of it, right? But we're also not pretending we're better or worse than we actually are. We're just going to let the results speak for themselves. Couple more here. I love these questions. What are my thoughts on harnessing humility and confidence when doing something for the first time, like leading others through a new experience, like a pandemic? Here's how I say this, and this is one of those examples of there's people who don't like this, even some people maybe even who are close to me. My perspective on this: I'm confident until I am wrong, and then I make corrections. And for me, that's an expression of humility. I'm going to be confident until I'm wrong, and I will be, and then I'll make corrections. Meaning I want to go forward with confidence, not blind confidence, not fake confidence, and not pretending I'm confident when I'm not, but I want to move forward with confidence until I'm wrong and then make corrections. And so what I'll do is I will, with a team, I'll say, look, this is what I'd like to do. Here's why I want to do it. And I believe this works, but I don't know if it will. Now, if I know it will, I lead very differently and I say, look, this is going to go and we're, a lot different kind of energy. But if I don't know if it's going to work, I'll just express that. Right? I'm confident it will, but I'm not certain. And those are different, right? Confidence is not certainty, right? I am confident that our country is going to come out of this pandemic better, but I'm not confident on exactly when that's going to happen. And I'm definitely not certain when it's going to happen or certain that we will come out, but I am confident. And so I will proceed forward. And if I'm wrong, then I am wrong, and I will acknowledge so. So that's how I would go about that with a team is leading them by saying, look, we're going to move forward confidently, because if we walk fragilely, we're unlikely to put our best self forward. So confidence is about putting your best self forward, right? And courage is the same thing. And then humility is acknowledging that we will make missteps, or maybe this direction is not right, but to go forward fragilely is to not try the strategy that we've chosen. Okay. All right. And awesome. I think that's it. All right. And we went like 40 minutes again. I think maybe I'm teaching a little bit more than I thought I would, and I love your questions. I love it. For those of you who want to know how to sign up to get into the community, you can sign up for the community by going to dailydiscipline.com/community. And from there you can join. You can choose the best option for you. There's a monthly option and there's a yearly option. Obviously you save a little bit of money. I think like $40 a year if you go for the yearly option. But if you want to go for the monthly, by all means, go for that. In the community, we do resources. You can ask me questions every day. I put out a video every single day inside the community that's exclusive for people inside the community who are paying to be in there. It's a place that we engage directly, and in the community you can all talk to each other and you can exchange ideas, thoughts, applications back and forth with people like you and people a lot not like you as well. It's a really I'm very, very excited for what's happening within this community. So I appreciate you all. Tomorrow, and we're going to do 11 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow, we are going to move forward to the simple skill of empathy, the most important skill for attracting other people to us is empathy. Nothing makes a bigger difference in our connections and relationships with individuals in every part of our life. So thank you all. Have an amazing Saturday, and I'll see you all tomorrow.